To her family, Natalie Whitaker is just the quiet, bookish eldest daughter, the one who manages dusty artifacts and hosts sleepy exhibitions at the Chicago History Museum. Her parents, high-profile investors in the finance world, have always seen her as the outlier, stuck in the past while the rest of the family moves with the speed of modern innovation. Her younger brother, Damian Whitaker, is the golden child, a charismatic entrepreneur leading a flashy venture capital firm with headlines and magazine covers to his name. At family gatherings, when conversations turn to the markets, global politics, and the latest in artificial intelligence, Natalie usually sits silently at the edge of the room, sipping tea and listening. Nobody asks about her work. What's there to say about running a museum? Damian once joked, drawing laughter from around the table. But behind her unassuming exterior, Natalie Whitaker is a strategic genius, the architect behind one of the most powerful and secretive AI analytics firms in the world, Whitaker Insight Group. Operating quietly for over a decade, her company has become a trusted data partner for key government agencies, including the Department of Defense, the CIA, and some of the biggest tech conglomerates on the planet. No one, not even her own family, knows she's the founder and CEO pulling the strings. Whitaker Insight Group doesn't advertise. It doesn't raise venture capital, doesn't speak at conferences, and doesn't court the media. Everything is cloaked, held through layers of legal entities and managed through satellite offices scattered across Europe and North America. Under Natalie's leadership is a hand-picked team of data scientists, AI engineers, and cyber analysts, all bound by ironclad confidentiality agreements. She doesn't crave fame, she commands influence, and she does it from the shadows. It all began with her love of history and her uncanny ability to recognize hidden patterns in events. What started as analyzing behavioral clues in ancient documents evolved into modern-day data modeling, which she merged with cutting-edge AI to forecast trends, flag security threats, and build predictive frameworks for national institutions. No one would suspect that behind Natalie's calm demeanor and soft voice lies a mind orchestrating a $70 billion tech empire. And she chooses secrecy, not out of fear, but out of purpose. She knows true power doesn't need to be seen to be felt. Her family's disregard didn't break her spirit, it fueled her drive. In their ignorance, they gave her the space to build something beyond their comprehension, something even Damian, the so-called prodigy, couldn't dream of matching. Damon Whitaker, Natalie's only brother, had always looked down on her profession. To him, the dusty photographs and ancient relics she curated at the museum were pointless, contributing nothing of real value to the world. What's the point of your job? He once scoffed during an argument. No one cares about the past. He was the kind of man who worshipped practicality, money, power, immediate results. In his eyes, history was just a clever excuse to avoid the real world, a way for Natalie to hide from the pressures of success as defined by the rest of the family. Natalie had learned not to take it personally. She knew that his judgment came from a narrow view of what success looked like. She didn't blame him. Instead, she leaned into what she believed. History wasn't just about the past. It was the framework for the present and the blueprint for the future. Every artifact, every story she preserved was a piece of humanity's larger puzzle. But to her family, she was the odd one out, the girl who never quite lived up to the Whitaker legacy. So when news of her parents' 40th wedding anniversary celebration arrived, Natalie was hesitant. She knew the event would be yet another reminder of how differently her life had turned out, and how little her accomplishments were recognized. Still, she made the decision to go, not to prove anything, but to honor her parents and, in her own way, to reclaim her place within the family. She spent hours preparing for the event. Carefully, she chose a sophisticated evening gown, elegant, tasteful, and flawlessly tailored. It was more than just a dress. It was her armor. It spoke of grace and quiet strength. She wasn't going to blend into the background or be whispered about. She would walk in with dignity and confidence. The moment she entered the ballroom, warm light cascading from chandeliers and soft music floating through the air. The room shifted, heads turned, conversations paused. Natalie's presence, poised and magnetic, commanded attention. In the far corner, Damon stood in a tailored black suit, his expression a mixture of surprise and veiled mockery. He hadn't expected her to show up like this. The party was packed with influential guests, investors, entrepreneurs, and longtime friends of the family. Damon was in his element. boasting about his latest multimillion-dollar deal, entertaining the crowd with talk of mergers and market dominance. But whenever someone turned to ask Natalie what she did, he would subtly change the subject or offer a patronizing remark. Hard to compete with billion-dollar deals. Huh? He muttered to a friend, unaware that Natalie overheard, but she didn't flinch. She had long stopped needing his validation. The strength of her convictions, and the empire she quietly built behind the scenes, gave her all the reassurance she needed. Later, during a conversation with her parents, Natalie spoke softly but firmly. I know my work isn't glamorous, and it doesn't make headlines or big money, but preserving history, protecting culture, it matters. It shapes how people understand the world, how they move forward. I believe that's worth something. Her parents didn't say much, but their eyes said everything. There was pride there, even if they struggled to express it. Natalie realized then that her presence alone, her poise, her integrity, had already made a statement louder than words. She didn't need to explain herself or impress anyone. As the evening progressed, Damon remained distant, but Natalie didn't mind. She had shown up, not just in body, but in spirit. She had refused to shrink herself to fit someone else's idea of value. And the gown she wore? It wasn't just a fashion statement. It was a declaration of identity, a symbol of how far she'd come. The celebration ended on a warm note, filled with laughter and memories. And though the distance between her and Damon remained, Natalie walked away knowing she had changed something. Not just how others saw her, but how she saw herself. She had stepped out of the shadows of judgment and into the light of her own truth, a woman of substance, quiet power, and undeniable worth. The party was reaching its peak. The entire Whitaker family gathered around the long dinner table, the clinking of glasses and bursts of laughter blending with the smooth jazz playing in the background. Damon stood up, raised his glass of red wine, and tapped it lightly with his spoon, drawing everyone's attention. His face beamed with pride, his navy tie perfectly aligned, an image of a polished, successful man. I have some exciting news to share, Damon announced, his voice cutting confidently through the hum of music. Whitaker Capital is on the verge of closing the acquisition of Halberg AI, one of the leading companies in commercial artificial intelligence. If all goes well, in just a few weeks, Halberg will be ours. The room erupted in applause and gasps of admiration. Their father, Martin, proudly patted Damon on the back, while their mother, Caroline, had tears shimmering in her eyes. For them, this deal wasn't just a milestone in Damon's career, it was proof that the Whitakers were still destined for greatness. Natalie smiled and nodded with the others, offering polite congratulations, but her eyes held a different kind of calm. Nothing about Damon's announcement surprised her, because she had signed the contract to acquire Halberg AI herself 3 days ago. No one, not even Damon, knew that Natalie was the founder and CEO of Whitaker Insight Group, a hidden empire of AI data analytics operating beneath the surface. With secret government contracts and global influence, through her discreet network, she had discovered the Halberg deal well before Damon's team did, and when she learned of his interest, she moved swiftly, not to sabotage, but because she understood Halberg's true value. Beyond the surface-level metrics Damon relied on, her deal was invisible to the public. No press conferences, no power angle photo ops. It all happened in a locked meeting room, sealed by NDAs and top-tier lawyers. Just a handshake, a digital confirmation line, and a quiet, knowing smile on Natalie's lips. She could have gone public in a heartbeat, overshadowed Damon's greatness with a single news cycle. But she didn't, not out of fear or humility, but grace. She knew how much their parents had invested, emotionally, in Damon's success. They deserved to enjoy this moment of pride, even if it was temporary. Besides, Natalie understood something deeper. Real power doesn't need a spotlight. It lives in control, quietly. She now held the lifeline of America's civil AI sector. Halberg was no longer a target, it was a key piece she'd been positioning in her strategy for years. Damon thought he was acquiring a hidden gem. Natalie knew she had just secured the keystone of an entire AI infrastructure, something her brother hadn't even begun to comprehend. At the party, when Damon swaggered over and smirked, "Our little history girl probably doesn't get any of this AI stuff. But enjoy the party anyway." Natalie just smiled, a calm, unshaken smile, no rebuttal, no challenge, just quiet authority. In that moment, she was no longer the library girl her family once dismissed. She was the one quietly steering the future of technology, and doing it in complete silence. She raised her glass, gently clinking it against Damon's. "Congratulations," she said, and silently thought, "Enjoy your moment. It won't last long." At exactly 8 a.m., while Chicago was just beginning to stir beneath the soft shimmer of the morning sun, a shockwave exploded through the worlds of tech and finance. Headlines blazed across the front pages of the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Bloomberg, and the Financial Times. Notifications lit up devices everywhere, accompanied by the same jaw-dropping news. Whitaker Insight Group officially acquires Halberg AI, orchestrated by Natalie Whitaker. Her image, calm, poised, dressed in a simple black suit, graced every major outlet. The once dismissed museum lady was now revealed as the mastermind behind a $70 billion AI analytics empire. And just like that, the narrative shattered. The city of Chicago was stunned. Silicon Valley was shaken, but no one was more shocked than the Whitaker family themselves. In the family kitchen, still buzzing from the celebration of Martin and Caroline's 40th wedding anniversary, silence fell like a curtain. Caroline dropped her coffee mug, eyes wide as the flat-screen TV repeated the bombshell announcement. Martin sat frozen, the toast untouched in front of him. On the screen, the news anchor spoke with urgency. Natalie Whitaker, previously known only as the director of the Chicago History Museum, has been confirmed as the founder and CEO of Whitaker Insight Group, the covert powerhouse behind numerous classified AI contracts with the U.S. government. As of this morning, she has completed a surprise acquisition of Halberg AI, beating out Whitaker Capital, led by her own brother, Damon. The silence in the room was deafening. Damon sat slumped on the couch, gripping his phone so tightly his knuckles turned white. He didn't need to read the articles. His inbox was flooded. Messages from investors, board members, journalists. He had been outmaneuvered. Natalie hadn't just won, she had dominated. And she did it quietly, efficiently, without ever seeking attention. That, more than anything, stung the most. All these years, Damon had dismissed her. He'd mocked her career in history, called her work cute and irrelevant. And yet here she was, not just in the same arena, but playing a whole different game, on a level he hadn't even known existed. Natalie hadn't done it for money or fame. She hadn't sought revenge or validation. She did it because she could. And she waited to reveal it, not out of cruelty, but consideration, so her family could enjoy one last moment of celebration before the truth came crashing in. And now, it had. The news cycle exploded. Natalie's name trended worldwide. Podcasts dissected her strategy. Tech influencers uploaded emergency YouTube videos breaking down her timeline. Headlines flooded the digital sphere. How Natalie Whitaker ran a secret tech empire from behind a museum desk. The real AI powerhouse. A woman in the shadows. Library director? Try tech mogul. Hashtags lit up every platform. Hashtag Natalie Whitaker, hashtag AI queen, hashtag library boss, hashtag silent genius. Meanwhile, Natalie herself remained unseen. No press conference, no interview, no comment. In her office on the top floor of Whitaker Insight, she sipped her morning tea as calls and emails poured in, calls from the media, top venture capitalists, government contacts, and, of course, Damon. She didn't answer. Instead, she opened her laptop and launched the first executive meeting with Halberg AI's leadership team, now her team. For the first time, the world was beginning to understand who Natalie Whitaker really was. Not the overlooked daughter, not the quaint museum director, not the passive academic, but a visionary, a strategist, the quiet architect of a tech empire that had just redefined power, not with noise, but with precision. And suddenly, everyone wanted to know more. Who was she? How had she built this in secret? Why had no one seen it coming? Damon, now reeling, was forced to face the bitter truth. The sibling he thought was insignificant had just outmaneuvered him on the global stage. And Natalie? She didn't need to say a word. Her work spoke louder than anything she could have ever announced. Natalie's penthouse, perched atop a high-rise in the heart of Chicago, glowed with understated elegance. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the sparkling city skyline. But tonight, the true spotlight was inside. The space, usually serene, now buzzed with unspoken tension. After 8 years of being overlooked, underestimated, and labeled the librarian, Natalie Whitaker was finally being seen for who she truly was. Damon arrived first, shoulders stiff, his silence louder than words. Gone was the smug older brother who had once mocked her history career. Tonight, he stood as a man whose ambitions had just been outmaneuvered. Behind him, their parents, Martin and Caroline, entered slowly, their expressions torn between disbelief and wounded pride. Several family friends followed, members of Chicago's elite, accustomed to being in control, yet now grasping for understanding. No one knew what to say. The morning's news had shattered their assumptions. Natalie Whitaker, the museum director they thought they knew, was the secret founder and CEO of Whitaker Insight Group, the $70 billion AI empire that had just acquired Halberg AI, the very company Damon had been trying to buy. Natalie appeared at the end of the hall, calm and composed in a simple black silk gown. Her voice broke the silence, soft but unwavering. I imagine everyone wants an explanation. No one answered at first. Damon finally spoke, his voice tight. How long have you been doing this? 8 years, she replied plainly. And in all that time, you let us think you were just cataloging history books? Caroline asked, her voice trembling slightly. Natalie nodded, meeting her mother's gaze. Because I didn't need to prove anything. I just needed to do what I knew I could do. Martin clenched his jaw. You realize what this does to the family? We're public figures. People will say you lied, manipulated, worked behind our backs. I didn't lie, Natalie said, stepping into the light. I simply chose not to speak. Because if I had, no one would have believed me. If I had explained, I would have been told I was dreaming. And if I'd been honest, I would have been stopped. So I let my actions speak. Silence followed, but this time, it was thoughtful silence. One of the older guests, Mr. Lyman, a retired banking executive, let out a low whistle. This girl played the entire tech world while we thought she was shelving books. Another guest, Marlene, a prominent venture capitalist, nodded slowly. Not just played, she won. She did what most CEOs only dream of. Damon looked down, running a hand through his hair. Why Halberg? Why block me? Natalie turned to him, her voice softer now. Because that deal represented everything you believed only power, money, and prestige could buy. But the future of AI doesn't belong to power, it belongs to vision. I didn't block you, I simply got there first. Caroline sat down, her hands slightly trembling. 8 years, you built an empire in silence. Alone. Not alone, Natalie said gently, placing a hand on her mother's shoulder. I had a team. I had people who believed in me. Just, not my family. Martin looked up, his eyes, once stern, now held something softer. I wanted you to be like Damon, strong, successful, a leader. But tonight, I realize you've surpassed all of us. In your own way. The air shifted. Tension gave way to something more open. Respect began to fill the space once occupied by judgment. Damon stepped forward, facing her directly. I was wrong. I couldn't see what you were building. Because it didn't look like what I was building. But clearly, you're the one who understood the future. Natalie smiled faintly, not smug, just steady. Thank you. That night, in a penthouse aglow with city lights and quiet revelations, a new chapter began, not with rivalry or resentment, but with the long overdue recognition of the quietest force in the room, the woman they had once dismissed, who had now outshone them all. The top floor of the penthouse was unusually still. Warm golden light filtered through sheer curtains, wrapping the room in a soft glow that Natalie had carefully curated, not to impress, but to welcome. Her family, who never truly believed in her, were finally stepping into her world. Just hours earlier, the city of Chicago had been rocked by news that Natalie Whitaker, the quiet museum director, was, in fact, the mastermind behind the $70 billion acquisition of Halberg AI. The woman everyone had overlooked as the library girl was the powerful CEO of Whitaker Insight Group, one of the largest AI empires operating behind the scenes in America. Her parents arrived first. Martin Whitaker's brow was furrowed, his silence betraying shock. Caroline dropped into the leather sofa, her hands trembling around a glass of wine she barely touched. Damon, Natalie's older brother, came in last. His face held a mix of disbelief and wounded pride. For years, he had basked in being the family's golden child. Now, that image had shattered in a single headline, by the little sister he had dismissed for so long. Silence lingered. Natalie knew exactly what they were all thinking. The disbelief, the pride swallowed, the unspoken regret. Then Damon broke the stillness, his voice cutting through the air. Why didn't you tell us any of this? Natalie stood tall, no longer shrinking, no longer apologetic. Because I knew no one would believe me if I did. She met his gaze squarely, calm and unflinching. I tried. I shared ideas, hopes. I wanted to be heard. But every time, I was met with smiles of pity, followed by, "That's unrealistic," or "Just stick to history." "It suits you." Damon stayed quiet, a subtle twitch in his jaw. "So I chose silence," she continued. "Instead of fighting for recognition, I focused on building, quietly, steadily. I didn't need applause. I needed results." Caroline's voice trembled. "But, you're my daughter. How did I not know?" Natalie offered a soft smile. "You knew, but you looked at me through the lens of expectations, not belief." The room felt heavier, more honest. Martin cleared his throat, a touch of sadness in his tone. "I always thought I knew my kids. Turns out, I barely knew the one who was right in front of me." One of the guests, Lucille, a retired Yale professor, spoke with quiet admiration. She didn't need to shout. Real brilliance doesn't have to. Natalie turned to Damon, whose pride was visibly bruised. "You've always led the way," she said gently, "but sometimes, those who walk behind are the ones who see further. Success doesn't always shout. Some victories are born in silence, through patience, persistence, and purpose. I didn't need the world to recognize me. I just needed to stay faithful to what I was building." Damon studied her for a long moment before letting out a heavy breath. "I was wrong," he admitted, "so caught up in what I had. I didn't see that you were redefining success in your own way." That night didn't end with applause or celebration, but it ended with something more meaningful: respect. Natalie didn't have to boast. Her quiet, consistent work had spoken louder than anything she could have said. She had proven that true success doesn't always arrive with fireworks, it often grows in silence, unnoticed, until the results become impossible to ignore. She had once been the girl no one believed in. Now, in that quiet penthouse, she was the one they looked up to. Not just as a sister or daughter, but as a visionary.